And really what happened, this is going way back, but the original Star Wars movies, you guys have maybe seen those, they're really old now. Yeah. But you remember where Luke gets his hand cut off, and he jumps into the Millennium Falcon, and 5 minutes later they slap a robotic arm on him, and it all works perfect, and he can feel and everything, right? Well, guys in Department of Defense saw that, and all went, we want that. And seriously, started really putting huge amounts of money behind this sort of thing. But I thought I would show you just the realities and how kind of crudely and simply this started. So this is a non-human primate who's been trained to do a very simple task, which is basically reach out, he's got to look at and reach out and touch a dot on the screen, and then he gets a target flash somewhere in the periphery, and then he's got to wait a second until this target in the middle disappears, and then he's got to reach to where that cue was. So he's reaching to a remembered target location, right? Very simple. Like the simplest video game you've ever seen. But let me just show you this here. Hopefully. Can you guys hear that? Let me see if I can. But that clicking you're hearing is actually a neuron in his brain firing. So there's an array of neurons in his primary motor cortex, which not necessarily this parietal lobe, that controls arm movements. And so what we're doing is, again, we're listening to that area and actually decoding the movement he's going to make, but before he does it. That's where it gets cool. So this is the first couple ones. I think Kim just actually doing the movement, right? So for instance, when I was touching, gets the cue, go down. But now, so you can look, okay, here's a better one, to the left. And see this, you see that big square that flashed? That big square was, its location was determined solely on the signals coming from his brain. So we're like reaching, decoding, okay, he's going to reach to the left. And we can decode that. And so we just did this now, right? But then what's really interesting is watch, it's like he almost forgets about his arm. It just keeps kind of sliding down because he's just thinking about doing the task now. He doesn't actually have to do it. He's just planning it in his head. We're decoding that signal, and then the computer does the task for him, right? So really, really simple. Nothing complicated, right? But this was like, gosh, early 2000s, 2001, 2002, something like that.
About 2002.
2002, yeah. And this got us a science publication. I mean, this was a huge bit of news. This paper is my second most cited paper. It has over 1,000 citations. It was kind of a big deal. It was that simple, right? But that's the reality, guys. It's not like, you're not getting into the metaverse anytime soon. I hate to break it to you. That's just not going to happen. But building on that work, we started doing some more sophisticated stuff with humans. And this has kind of been my trajectory. So my whole career is kind of moving from animals into humans, because honestly, working with the patients, you can do just amazing things. And the technology is getting to the point now where you can do this fairly routinely. So this is now at the University of Utah, where I got my first professorship. And we have now a patient who is undergoing surgery for epilepsy. It's a common kind of, we like piggyback on the epilepsy surgery to the electrodes because there's like no risk, right? They're going to have the surgery anyhow, that sort of thing. So it's a chance to get these devices in these patients and work with them in a very, very safe way. So this is him just doing the task. Here, let's see what he's doing here. So hopefully everyone's at plate. So wait. There we go.
And when you get there, please stop.
This gives you kind of a real sense of what it's like to do this. It's not like in some super nice controlled lab environment. It's like beeps going off, the family coming in, bringing them something. It's like this much more chaotic environment, but it's kind of cool.
Good. Okay, one.
So this again, just reaching for targets, right? Very dead simple. But that whole head wrap, you can send him, oh shoot, that's bad. Fortunately, I have my card, my charger. Sorry about that. Much better than this.
4. 1.
But you get a sense of what he's doing there, right?
Yeah.
And you see that tablet he's on there? What that is, think of that like a super high resolution match is essentially what that is. Just to get detailed information about his hand position. Because that's what we test against to then do the decoding. Right? We have to actually know what the hand is doing really well to kind of train the algorithms to make it go. So here, this is just a short video of, now what you're seeing here, so this is, the blue dot is the actual data from that tablet. So this is actually where his hand is. The red dot is the position we're decoding purely from the neural signals. So that red dot, all it knows is the information in the brain. And from that information, we were able to create this sort of tracking of where his hand's moving. So all that information about where he's moving his hand, you can get straight out of the brain and use it to control signals and that sort of stuff. Devices, I mean, not signals, the signals control the devices. Okay, and so here's where this is going now. So now we're kind of getting into the reality of it, right? So this is, you guys know who Agent Coulson is? Everybody here Marvel fans? Yeah, so I love Agent Coulson. He's one of my favorite characters. I actually got to meet him once in Park City for the big new. That's one of those. I think he's a really nice guy. I'll tell you, he actually stopped and talked for me for quite a while, actually. It's very cool. But anyhow, in the Marvel movie, he got his hand chopped off, and of course they slap on a robotic one. It's awesome. Has superpowers. It can like shoot beams or whatever. You know. But this guy, this John Nathan, this is for real. So this guy right here, this is for real. This is actually kind of the state of the art right here. And this is actually a project I was part of done through DARPA. You guys heard of DARPA? The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. This is the guy who brought you stealth and the internet, amongst other top secret projects that are now public. They throw unbelievably large sums of money at really cool devices with the expectation that 90% of them will fail. That's their model. So they give you a whole bunch of money, they push a limit, and they expect you to fail. Because if you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough. It's kind of their motto. So anyhow, we had this crazy thing where we're supposed to build this robotic arm, plant it in the brain, get it all working, and literally the task was to get them so they could play the violin. We had like 4 years, and I think they nationwide they put like $100 million behind it or something like that. It was a pretty crazy project. But this is the kind of stuff that came out of it, where they literally had an osseointegrated, so that arm is like integrated into his bone. See the two bands around his arm there? Where do you think they're recording? What could they record there? You guys don't know the answer. Trust yourselves. Go for it.
Like the near muscle signals.
Exactly. It's the EMG. It's just the residual muscles, right? Because he still has the nerves that go down to that muscle, so he can kind of flex his arm and that sort of stuff, and those generate signals. And I was trying to practice. I mean, he was pretty good. He could actually do control his hand and fingers and pick stuff up. It was pretty awesome. And I'm pretty sure he still has this to this day. I mean, it's not like he's not playing the violin. We didn't get anywhere close to that. But it's usable and pretty cool technology. And they did it. I mean, this is for real. This is not a movie. Part of that whole project, I also ended up testing another little device. And you can see these little, just like the little dark marks in this. This is a CT scan. Just to think of like an X-ray. Those are little EMG sensors that are actually implanted intramuscularly. So they're intramuscular electrophysiological sensors, or IMEs for short, right? And my part here was to get to test them and validate them and use, again, a non-uniform model. But I just want to show how cool these things are, because so I'll show you the scan. Watch the devices themselves. They move. They move with the muscles. So a little bit, the mic will flex on his fingers, and you'll see one of them. See it shift there. That one takes the right for me. Do you see it shift? It's like in the muscle. Like so, when he moves his fingers, it actually moves with fingers. So a really cool implantable device. And so we had these implanted in this monkey's muscles, and then we're able to decode it. And so just to give you again a little bit of detail here, how much do you think that arm costs? Not you're a little high, but yes, it's a lot. Back then it was like 200,000. So as a chunk to design it and all that probably cost 50 million to design it and get it built. But to get your hands on one was 200,000. They gave it up. So what we did is we wrote this nice. It's like a virtual reality model. So it's an actual model of that exact, not that one, but a version of the DARPA arm that we can control. And it costs like $2,000 to run on a computer, right? And then do the same thing for experience. Okay, so what we had this animal do, and again, if you guys can see it pretty well, this visual, but the little lights in the middle, those are they're telling him what pattern of fingers to move, right? You do index, middle, and the thumb, and the different combinations. And then, but the arm does not know that. All the arm knows is what are the signals coming from these little intramuscular EMG sensors. So it's just like the electrophysiological data coming out, and we were able to control this thing with like amazing tracking in real. And this is in real time. This is not like after the fact. This is as the monkey's doing it. This is happening, and we got pretty dang good control. And this is where this one. And this is what happens all the time. You do all the hard legwork, or I do all the hard legwork, and then the doctors step in and take all the glory. So you guys get all the glory. And so Paul Pasquina, we just validated, this is my job, so I feel happy to do it. Took it and then really ran with it and got it into some soldiers. He worked at the big Army Medical Center.
The VA.
There's the VA, but that was one of the big.
Walter Reed?
Yes, Walter Reed, thank you, that's it, yes. But right, which is part of the VA, yeah. But this video is really long, but we'll just cut to the chase here and get to the good stuff. Hopefully this will work. So let me advance. May not let me advance. It does, but then won't play. Sorry guys. I don't think it's that long. But you can see there's those sensors. He's actually showing it there. And there's the hand. And this is the guy, this is what he can do with it now. I mean, so this is a soldier who actually lost his limb. And also the soldier there, he's a bioengineer too. He's actually part of the design team on this project. But he also is one of the first users. I mean, this is not bad. Beats the heck out of pretty much all the prosthetic devices that are commercially available today. But so this is the kind of technology that's coming out of this and how it's being utilized for patients. Okay, but in all that, what's missing? Great control, right? Go for it.
Sensor?
Exactly. There's no, it's so important when you pick stuff up, you want to feel it, right? And you want to feel how tightly you're squeezing it. You guys are, I don't know, does anybody here have kids? No, you're too young. But think, you can imagine this, right? If you have a baby, right, are you going to pick that baby up with that hand? No, and they won't. Seriously, they absolutely refuse to. Because they can't tell, with great discernment how strongly they're grasping, right? Right, and so they'll use their good hand, and they'll use this hand like support, but they won't ever grasp with it, right? So you need to have that sense of touch. So that was then kind of our next step in this whole process, is how do we get sensory information to these people? And so, again, how would you do that?
Vibration.
I'm sorry?
Vibration.
This is a great one, actually, yes, and this is one they're doing. There's a thing that's called a tactor. Sorry, this is a great setup, so perfect question, thank you. This is a little bit tangential, but this is something I was not involved with, but one of my friends, Cindy Chestek, who's at University of Wisconsin-Madison, does this. And she actually partnered with a surgeon, and what they do is they actually take the residual nerves from an arm that's been amputated, dissect them out, down to where they separate the sensory and motor aspects of the nerve, re-innervate them to the chest wall, so little bits of muscle tissue, and then they can touch them, and they get sensory input, but it feels like it's coming from the fingertip, right? Because that's where the nerve used to go, and the person can flex the finger, and it causes the little next door neighbor thing to twitch, and then they can decode that using EMG. It's brilliant. Yeah?
So does that mean that the technologies are connected to the motor nerves instead of the sensory?
Well, they're both. So in this case, with the thing I just described, they're doing both. The technology we've done so far is all motor, all the stuff I've been involved with. This is Cindy's work. You kind of exhausted my whole knowledge of it right there, because it's not my work. But it's really cool. But it's really they call it targeted reinnervation. And then basically we take that nerve and then they use the muscle as like a little bioamplifier. But they can do it on the sensory side too. And so they actually implant a little array of what they call tactors, which are little vibrators. They go zzz, right on that little muscle, and it feels to the patient like it's coming from their hand, right? So you can easily think what you do there is you map the sensor that controls the tactor into the prosthetic limb. So yes, that's a great approach to do it. And honestly, one I think is really going to take off. What we were doing is a little bit more direct, where we went straight to the nerve. Because that's what I do. We put electrodes in nerves, right? So we put an electrode right in the nerve and then stimulate rather than record to see what patients can do. And we do both of those, but I'll just show you this. So this is the first patient we worked with. This guy was awesome. He was a bit challenging just because he was a real hard worker. He actually lost his arm in a wood chipper. Yeesh. So be careful around heavy machinery, folks. But he was a great guy to work with, really dedicated to the work. But he actually kind of killed us at one point because he kept working with the device in and he actually crushed it. He broke it. So they had to go and take it out. But this is 32 years after his amputation, and you can see the wire coming. So this wire literally connects to a little array of microelectrodes that we implanted in his residual nerves to stimulate and record to see if we can do all this, control stuff. And I think this is 2 or 3 days post-op. So this is like seriously like first try. Let me see here. Hopefully you can hear this.
Okay,
Oh,
so
there we go.
can you try moving your index?
So realize this guy is not, his index finger has been gone for 32 years, right? And so he's trying to move his index finger that does not exist, right? So the nerves are sending those impulses down, come out, but then they don't go anywhere because there's nothing there. Watch his face. So he's seriously, he's just
Okay,
sitting there.
move your index halfway and hold it there. Okay, you go back, relax. Then move it all the way. Hold it there, relax.
I mean, this blew us away.
Okay.
This is seriously like
Move
2
it
days
halfway.
post-op without hardly any training at all, just to get it like worked right away.
And then relax. Okay.
I think this is, now, it was so interesting. The problem actually you find with these patients, and this is something you guys will all encounter, is patient compliance. I mean, as soon as he figured this out, it was really hard to keep him on task because he just wanted to sit there and go like this all the time. You know, he just wanted to do his own stuff, and it was really quite challenging. Also, the voice you heard there, again, just to kind of think about where you could go with this sort of stuff. He was an MD PhD in my lab, who now is in the Department of Neurosurgery at University of Utah now. So, yeah, it worked out really well for us. Yeah.
So, one thing I found surprising is that this is 33 years first time.
Yeah.
So, like, neuroplasticity, like, always is changing. Like,
You got it.
I was just wondering, like, how is the brain still able to maintain those, like,
We were
sort of,
so worried about this. No, this could have failed completely for exactly that reason.
it's like,
Yep.
not having the arm there just would have recompensated.
Well, because realize particularly this was in, from the nerve itself, right? And that nerve is coming straight from primary motor cortex,
Right.
which there's still some plasticity in there, but not a lot because it's a hardwired part of the brain.
Correct.
So, but we had long conversations about that exact issue. It's like we do all this and the control signals are just not there because the brain's co-opted it completely for something else.
Right.
And we talked about trying to get some fMRI to kind of check beforehand, and that might, but we didn't. I can't remember why, because I think again we were just like, let's just go see.
Well, we had like a sigh of relief after watching.
What's that?
Like a sigh of relief after.
No, seriously, no. We were sweating bullets at this point, no, because this is the first time we ever did this ever.
Yeah.
And it could have failed completely. And what we were hoping that, because I think what we were worried about is that even if we did the MRI and the MRI was negative, that's not definitive. There still could have been some residual control in there. So it's like we're just going to go see. And we talked all about the patient. The patient was like, fine. He's like, I'm not using the nerve anyhow. So I was like, I don't care. And then everything got explants and everything too, so it was all fine. Oh yes.
On the same note, do you have any experience with like people who are born like completely without limbs, and is that like more difficult?
Yes, and I'll get to that, but actually this is more in the context of vision. But no, your question is exactly right. So how about somebody who never had it? So the brain may set up completely differently, right? In that case, I have not really thought about it in the motor realm as much as the sensory realm, but that's a big issue. And so let me address that when I get to that part, though. Is that okay? Okay. But so let me get to the sensory bit. So that was just motor control, right? So this is, again, kind of the things you end up finding when you start working with patients. We had this whole complex experiment planned out where we stimulate and get a sensors, all the super control thing, presented it to the patient, and the patient was like, nah, we're not doing that. And here's why. Because in the whole consent form, we had to list every possible thing that could go wrong. And one of the things that go wrong is we could stimulate pain fibers. And we could stimulate them pretty strongly, right? And so we had to list things like you may feel like burning and stuff. And he was like, no, screw that. We're not doing that. So what he insisted is that he be in control of the experiment. And so like, okay, so how do we do that then? So we had to write this whole new code thing where we literally just gave him control of the simulation level. So he could set it and stop it and start it and all that stuff. He totally had control. He was super happy about this, but this is the first time he did this, and so like watch his face here. And what you'll see what he does is he sets the value there to to what he sets it to 5 at the beginning, and that's 5 microamps, millions of an amps. This is like the smallest amount of electricity you've ever seen, right? I mean, most even really small electronics are milliamps, right? So we're 1,000 times less than that. But watch his face and listen to what he says here. I just love that expression.
This is just a tip.
And then he has to, yeah, I felt something or not, so yes or no. And he goes to 6.
Yeah, I felt it.
You did?
Twice.
Really?
Yep.
Say yes and then describe it. 6.
Now listen to how he describes it.
Right in between these two fingers,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Right there,
Okay.
on both of them.
Fantastic.
Now realize he's pointing to this hand, right? But he's not feeling it on that hand, right? Where is he feeling it? He's feeling it on the hand that does not exist, right? Because we're stimulating the nerve that used to go to there. And it's hit with 2 fingers, so we're on the nerve, our targeting's not great, right? It's like, it's banding nerves or something like that. Oops. Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys. I don't think I can advance it. I don't think I'll screw it up.
That's good. This is just a tip. Say yes and no.
Yeah, I felt it.
You did?
Twice.
Really?
Yep.
Say yes and then describe it. 6.
Right in between these two fingers,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Right there,
Okay.
on both of them.
Fantastic.
All right?
Okay. So I realize eventually I'm running time, so I'm going to start going a little bit faster. Again, so then we just mapped out on every electrode where they felt it, map out, so again, the word again, map where to put sensors on a prosthetic limb. The last thing I want to get to is actually kind of the subjectivity of this, right? I'll show you those, but he again, we wanted to get modulation. If you're still there touching it or not, it's not particularly useful, but how strongly am I squeezing, how much pressure is there, right? That's what you need to feel. So we modified the task, and now what he's got in his left hand is actually a pressure sensor kind of thing you put on the prosthetic limb. So he's pressing on it to modulate the level of pressure on it, and that modulates the level of stimulation that he's feeling. And you can see that kind of the little white ticks on the screen he's looking at, the more of them together, that's the more he's being stimulated, right? But then listen just to his description of this. It's awesome.
So what do you feel?
Okay, so what it is the tip of this finger, okay, that, you know, and the tendency and the impulse, I can feel each pulse.
Each one.
Yeah. And as they speed up, I can feel more of the finger. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
I can feel more of that area.
Yeah, so think about that. Realize now we've left behind the realm of like hard quantifiable science, and we're into subjective perception, right? Because I can't say what are the units of that. You know, how it's like what? How, it's like it's just how we feel it, right? So you have to go through that. And boy, so let me give you another example. So this is the second patient we worked with. She was actually an artist and a philosopher. She was so awesome. She actually did like artwork based on this work that's so cool. But just listen to what she describes here.
I do have a little trouble
Relaxing.
keeping the, yeah, I think he just wants to be in on everything. Ed?
Well, and so realize that this is what we figured out, and we didn't figure this out till we kind of got into this work. When somebody has an amputation, there's still that representation of that hand is in your brain, right? So they still sense something here like the phantom limb. Oftentimes what happens to that phantom limb though is it kind of contracts. It feels like it's like closed all the time, right? We did not account for this. This is how we learned this, right? Look at the picture we're showing her of her hand position, right? And this is she was trying to communicate. She's like, yeah, you're showing me this visual image of my hand like this, right? But in my brain, it's like this, right? And then we're saying, flex your fingers. And she's like, well, they kind of already are. It's a little challenging. And we're asking her to do different things with different fingers, and she's just saying it's hard to do that. So we started working with her and actually kind of trained her to like visualize her hand open to kind of get it to match. We had to go through this long process.
Is tense. I mean, that's why this came up the other time, is that my default position is tense.
Okay.
And so it's not like I automatically go back to rest.
So anyhow, something we learned. She was really great too. So, but the thing that was fun too in publishing this paper, she used to describe them. So we'd ask her what you're feeling, stimulation stuff, and she described us like, it feels like the breeze of the morning blowing across the back of my hand. I'm like, Oh my God, how do I get that past scientific review? Seriously, it was like, so we went through like 5 reviews, and finally we just got the news, guys, we're not going to get quantitation here. It's not going to happen. And so we just included like tons of like what they said, and that was very useful. Okay, so this is going to get the vision real quick. I'll try and wrap this up pretty quick so we can get to questions. This was the goal. So the other obvious use. Somebody's totally blind. What does a blind person get? What treatment are there for blind people right now?
Vision
Is there any?
Nothing curative.
Nothing. Honestly, right now you get a stick and a dog. Seriously, those are the gold standard. I mean, it's like that's bad. Anyway, so the idea is you can take this process that had actually already been done in the retina, where they go straight to stream with the retina. That's like a commercialized project. But for somebody who doesn't have a retina, it's like go straight to the visual part of the brain and see what you can do there. And so that was the whole goal of this. Working with this company called Second Sight, who did this device, and this device is actually in probably several hundred people globally right now. And lets them see by going and stimulating directly the retina using this totally fully implantable device that goes in the eye. It's awesome. But that's limited in its patient population it can address. So that we were working with them to take that straight to the visual cortex, which is this back part of the brain, and use basically the same structure and use it to stimulate the visual cortex directly. And this is what's really interesting working with the industry side of people, right? Because I'm telling them, all you need is this one little electrode in the beginning, in the center, little tiny, like 200 micron diameter electrodes, all you need. They would not believe me. They would not trust all the data we did, and so they built this super complicated device that had all these things that you could chain together and stimulate this giant area of cortex to try, because they were so worried it wouldn't work, that we get a negative result, right? And so they built all this. First day we tested it, it worked great just on this, but we never stimulated on any of those other electrodes ever, because we just didn't need to. And here's again, so how we did this. So this is again, a non-human primate with this one of these devices implanted in its visual cortex. And what he's trained to do here is just detect that I see something, right? So we trained him again to play this kind of simple video game of looking at a screen and something flashes on the screen. And all he has to do is like lift his left hand and say, I saw something. Or sometimes we don't show something, he has to do his right hand and say, I didn't see something, right? So that's all he's got to do. Well, you'll see we flash lots of stuff on the screen, and he has to look at it. He has this little dot in the middle, that's his fixation point, and then he gets the stimulus on the outside. But there'll be some trials where nothing will appear on the screen, but it'll say stim down in the corner of the video, and that's when we stimulate his brain, and what you'll say, he says, I saw something. He'll say, I see something, even though there's nothing on the screen. And he's literally in total darkness. There's no light. It's like an infrared camera, right? So all he gets is that stuff on the screen. And it goes kind of fast. So this is him just doing it, right? So it's really easy. Left hand. Okay. But you see there, he saw something. He said, I saw something. You know, nothing on the screen. And there, nothing on the screen, but stim, right hand, and he sees something. So he can clearly differentiate between seeing something and not seeing something. So this thing here is stim, nothing on the screen, but I saw something. He's totally got this down. Right? He did this like 100,000 times. I mean, all over the place. So what do you think happened here? Got this all done. And this was Denise, actually a PhD student in my lab, did all this work, writing up the paper. What do you think happened? Company hired her and stole her. And she quit and left and went to go do the human trials. No, it was great. It was perfect. Exactly what she wanted. It was really good. So she went down to Baylor University where they're doing the human trials and did all the human trials down with that. So they're working on that. And just to give you a sense of kind of where this goes, so this is actually from the program Vice. I know you guys have heard of this program. It was on HBO for a while, so it's like a news program. Again, let's see if I can jump ahead here. Gosh, I don't think I can. Shoot, I'm sorry, guys. I might know it's even playing. There we go.
Hi. Can you?
Yeah, and this one's a long one, so actually let me just do this. And I'll come back just to this mode, and then to here, I'm pretty sure I can jump ahead. There we go. Yeah, here we go. So I want to get, there's this one, here we go. This is the important bit. So this guy is like blind. I mean, like blind, like no sight whatsoever. The only visual input he has comes through this device that's implanted in his retina. And he's out walking around, right? But you see his cane still.
That was a big truck or bus or something, yeah.
Rather than being totally blind, it's like having a visual cue.
So you're walking around in Boston,
Didn't happen.
and you've got your cane. Your cane does not tell you. There's the 2-ton truck coming down the road 50 feet away, right? This device lets them see that, so it lets them navigate out in the real world without, which you could not do without this device. Very, very cool. Okay, so I'm going to go like 10 minutes over. Is that okay? I need like 2 more minutes to finish up. So I want to get to this. So this is all old work. I'm not actually doing any of this anymore. What I'm doing is this stuff. And this is much more in the human realm, and it's all like neurosurgery, neurology. You guys heard of deep brain stimulation? Anybody not heard of it? It's basically you put electrodes deep in the brain and stimulate the brain. It's exactly what it sounds like. Treated for Parkinson's disease, pretty much several movement disorders. And here's the video. This is actually, do you remember this? Yeah, this is when we were back, well, my wife was a medical student, I was a PhD student, and they started to do this at WashU, and it was like one of the first places in the United States that this is happening. It was developed in Israel, which is real, I mean, there's obviously a young Israeli boy here. But this boy has like super terrible dystonia. So just, again, I'm just going to maybe skip through this where you can, this is his mobility. This is not good. This is how he can get around, right? Just because he has a dystonia, which is this kind of abnormal muscle contractions. Again, he just can't control his muscles really well, right? Can't sit up, can't walk. So pretty bad, right? And obviously a young kid. And he can't do any of the classic neurological tests. Yeah, and that's him. If they're not supported, he just falls over, right? All right, so here, this is classic neurological test, heel chin test. This is check leg coordination. And actually, again, I'll skip forward a bit here because this goes on for a while. So touch my nose, stomp my feet, do just that double kinesia test here in a second. Then he does it. Again, I can control my hands. In a second here, he's going to do something where seriously everybody was like trying not to cry in the audience, and we all saw it. He just jumps up and walks. Just boom. It's like, holy moly, what happened? But literally, this is what DBS does. And they actually, in the video, and I couldn't get it, and this is, you can tell this is like VHS tape that are digitized. That's how old this stuff is, right? But they showed him riding his bike around with his pals in his neighborhood after this, too. It was like super awesome. And this is, I'll just jump to maybe there's a good part here. Actually, no, the first bit here's the good part.
Not my voice.
Sorry.
Exaggerated, these are all the most complex structure in the known universe.
Okay.
It enables our movement.
And deep brain stimulation surgery. And
so that's Dr. Ponce. He's one of the neurosurgeons I work with over at the Barrow. And I think it is safe to say he is the leading deep brain neurosurgeon in the world. He's done more procedures than anybody else on the planet. And not by like a little bit, but like twice as many as the next person. He's like off the charts and he's still and that's me over in the corner.
the conditions we treat with this are Parkinson's disease and tremor.
So deep brain stimulation is exactly like it sounds.
So this is Dr. Schill. She's the head of the movement disorders clinic over there. So she's the person who works face with all these people, the patients, actually does like the programming of DBS, all the clinical care for that, and is involved in qualifying all these patients for the surgery. So again, without her, we're toast. It's like she's the one who gives us all the patients. And so it's all this cool coordination between neurosurgery, neurology, science. It's awesome.
A target in the brain, kind of right in the central part of the brain, in the deep brain structures, targeted with basically a little brain pacemaker.
And through our partnership with the people at the Barrow Neurological Institute, we're trying to get a deeper understanding of its mechanism so we can utilize it better.
Yeah, because you know what? I've been doing this for like 30 years now. There's nearly 500,000 people have them in their brains. Nobody has any idea how it works. Like, seriously. You start, everybody starts going, well, I don't know, it does this, or we do that. And it's like, yeah, we just don't know how it works. We're trying to figure that out, and that's what we're doing. So what I'm doing with these guys now is we're actually looking at the response to the brain in real time during the stimulation at both the neuronal level and kind of at the global level. We're trying to see how it affects the information process in the brain in real time as it's happening. So we have these complex intraoperative procedures where a little microelectrode down in there, equipped from a single neuron, this little grid of electrodes on the brain to see how it's talking across these different areas of the brain. We're starting to get some really cool data. And actually my most recent graduate student, who's an MD PhD, just got a paper published on this and is now kind of moving into her third year in medical school. So she's way too busy to talk to me anymore. I'm hoping at some point we'll finish up the second day. 2 fourth year now, that's right. Yeah, which means I'm going to see her even less. So I saw her for like 2 weeks over the summer, but that was it. But she's awesome, and we'll get to that. The other really cool thing to keep this on your too. New technology is that these implanted devices now for the DBS, they now can record. So there's now the capability to get intra-brain recordings from these patients for decades while they kind of wander around the world. So this is like, this is the Neuralink dream that's already happening a little bit, much simpler. But we can get data from these guys ongoing. They get to show a little bit of this little device I designed as part of this whole study that they implant that lets us listen to the surface of the cortex at really high resolution. That's just an intraoperative CT scan of it, what it looks like under the skull, just on the top of the brain. And this is, again, kind of the neurosurgery medical part of it. Because what Dr. Ponce is like the best in the world at doing is getting these electrodes down through all this complex neural structure and getting exactly the right electrode into this subthalamic nucleus, this little tiny 2-millimeter target, 20 centimeters deep in the brain that you've got to hit with exact precision. And he does it like every time. He like never misses. It's crazy. He keeps, I mean, I think he's had 2 out of the several thousand he's done that they had to fix. I mean, the guy, it's amazing how he's refined this. And again, you guys are all going to medicine, so if I show surgical pictures, nobody's going to freak out or pass out. All right, cool. So this is what it really looks like. So that is the patient right on the back face up. That's the craniotomy, a little scalp resection. Can you see how tiny that craniotomy is? It's about a centimeter in diameter. He does all his work through that craniotomy. All the electrodes, everything go down through there. It's so cool. And and it's all closed up. The patient usually goes home like the next day. It's awesome. It's just amazing how this all works. And then actually this is the video here I want to show. This is really cool. So what's going on here? This is us in the OR. This is our little computer setup. These the yellow little tick lines going up and down, that's actually the neuron firing. You guys know about action potentials, the neurons? Those are action potentials from in the human brain in real time, right? The big solid yellow part to the right, or to the left, I guess, sorry, what do you guys think that is? It's a little bit of a trick question. You might be able to guess. So what is this patient having implanted in their brain? It's a deep brain stimulator, right? When you turn that puppy on, it puts out a lot of electrical activity. It totally saturates all our equipment, right? So that's what's happening there. But watch, this is what's so cool. So cell firing along. And this cell, this neuron, is like 2 millimeters away from the electrode that they're going to stimulate on the DBS, right? So it's like right next to it, right? Getting awesome signals. And then instead we turn on the stimulator and it just saturates everything, right? Seriously, this is like dropping lightning bolts next to your really delicate electronic equipment, right? But watch this. So right after the simulation, cell's right back. It's like the cell doesn't even care. I mean, this is how little. Everyone used to think, oh, what's the cell? And that's that. Actually, she's like, yes, today she got super good data. But it's like, that's the level. You think we're going in. I mean, think about this. Like in my computer, if I stuck an electrode on my computer and started stimulating electricity, is that going to make the computer work better? No, it's probably going to burst into flames or something, right? This is what's so wild about this. We do this in the human brain, put an electrode in, put in huge amounts of electricity. It doesn't seem to care. The person gets up and walks. It's like, what? What is going on there? Still trying to figure this out, but this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to skip this just real quick. I'm going to play one of these for you, because this is actually, these are different cells in the brain. This is just what it sounds like. So this is the thumb cell. This is me. I say hello, and this is so that's subthalamic nucleus. This is just right next to it, the anterior thalamus. And just listen to how different this is. Totally different, right? Different computation, what's going on there. This is actually from the substantia nigra. This is the part of the brain that's damaged by the disease itself. It's like a clock. Really interesting, right? Trying to figure out what all this is doing. Where this is going is this is now data that we can get from devices implanted. So this is from a patient who's actually undergoing DBS for pain, which is the current thing I'm working on, right? Chronic pain. What do you do for chronic pain? Typically they give them opioids, right? Any problems with that? You guys heard about this stuff in the news? It's gone a little wrong, right? Like people are dropping dead left and right from this thing called fentanyl, right? Not good. But if you're in severe chronic pain, you got to do something, right? So we're starting to do this. And again, one of the first things we see is there's this band up at 83 hertz. What the heck was that? What is the brain doing at 83 hertz? All this stuff down here, all this kind of broken up stuff, this is all typical neurological stuff. And here's actually, so that's Dr. Muzade, that's Sydney, who's the person affected, and this is actually the patient whose data brain, this is her brain that you're looking at, right? Awesome. Worked like a charm. She had severe trigeminal neuralgia, pain so severe on her face, could not work, could not function, could not go out. Described this like her face was on fire, like literally not like a burning sensation. No, my face is on fire, you know. And turned on the device, and she said it felt like a warm cloth being placed on my face, like just like that. And she's super. I mean, she's pretty happy, right? She came and hung out this whole day to do this, right? We're starting to see these very interesting little telltale markers of these bands. The actual big bright ones, that's actually the stimulation itself. And what we're starting to see is like these interesting subharmonics of stimulation happening only in the brain. It's like causing some sort of oscillation in the brain. We're starting to figure out what's going on, and hopefully we can then titrate this to her pain relief and work this out. And this is where we're going next. Okay, and now I'll be quiet. And this is a picture of my beautiful wife's medical school graduation. The guy to the right there, that's Tom Thatch, who's actually my advisor, who trained me. So he was a Harvard-trained neurologist. So this is where I learned all my chops from, right? I always love showing this picture and teasing him. He looks like a tomato. He kind of thought that was funny until he didn't. But you know, he's a Harvard-trained neurologist. He can take it. But with that, I'll stop and happy to answer any questions. And thank you. So sorry, like with most professors, I professed longer than I intended. We still got a bit of time for questions. And so what I would say, or my advice to you guys would be, now's the time to ask Susan, how do I get into medical school? This is the
If that's what you guys want to talk.
Well,
Susan.
Yeah.
Greg, let me just say hello. Got my medical degree from Washington University in St. Louis, which is where I'm happy. I did my PhD in family medicine at UCLA, and then practiced for about 16 years, primarily faculty for family medicine residency programs, so worked with a lot of residents as well as medical students. Currently, I am faculty at Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine in Utah. It's the wonders of the modern world where I get to work remotely and teach, and I don't have to commute, and I don't have to do patient charts anymore.
So I get to see my wife.
Yes, which is lovely. But I do have a fair bit of experience as far as reviewing all of the applications to medical school, and you know, just a lot of experience of what it was like for me, and then mentoring people. Bradley and I spend a lot of times with students that he gets to know here at ASU. You know, sometimes just giving some advice and background, and sometimes nudges in the right direction. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, general, fairly specific. I won't be offended at all if you just want to ask Bradley about his really cool research. That would be so fun. So.
Fire away.
I have a question for each of you. So,
yeah, comes down
do you
do you think there's any like specific internships?
It's date night for us two guys. Sorry. This is like, we get to go sit there together and hang out.
Do you think there's any specific internships that helped you get to medical school?
Internships. I wouldn't say like an internship is really necessary.
Okay. Or like research or like
what you're going to want to do is demonstrate that you know what you're getting into. So shadowing opportunities, learning how to be a medical scribe is great experience. You can get paid, you learn medical terminology, you get a lot of exposure, and you can demonstrate to admissions committees that you know how long and drawn out and sometimes disgusting medicine can be.
And unless you've been there, you don't know yet. It's going to be a level of disgusting you have not seen.
Yes. Because, you know, like one thing, that folks that want to go to medical school tend to be idealists. Like, most of you in this room aren't sitting here saying, I think I want to go to medical school because I just want to earn, like, a whole lot of money and just not work very hard. Like, that's usually not where that motivation is coming from.
It's okay to make a lot of money too, though. Be cool with that.
Yeah,
Hopefully you will.
that is totally fine. But most people actually want to go into medicine because you want to help people, because you find it intellectually stimulating and satisfying. So balancing that idealism that most young folks have with that dose of reality of, like, I know that this is not just everything that you see on TV. You're demonstrating that you have that curiosity and sometimes that fortitude to kind of stick it out when it gets to be a bit of a slog. So I wouldn't say like an internship necessarily, but you want to show that you know what you're getting into.
Like hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Get into the gore. Seriously. Do the grossest,
As much
nastiest
as you
you
can. You don't have to be as gross as you can.
Well, but yes, no, but that will be respected. Yeah, I'm being a little
Yeah.
silly.
Yeah.
But no, but you have to demonstrate, because what, and I think you'll
Mm-hmm.
what the worst outcome for the medical school is somebody who gets halfway through and then says, I can't take it, and quits.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
happens at third year.
Yeah.
And they hate that.
Right, because we really don't want to invest in that first 2 years of education through the basic sciences and then get somebody out onto your third year rotations and suddenly it's just like, whoa, this isn't really what I thought this was going to be like. Because, not only is that, not doing that student any favors, but then that's taking a spot in the medical school that somebody else could have filled. So that's one thing. As far as research is always helpful. Do you have to have a great, multiple publications? Not necessarily. Can you get a poster out of it? Can you show that, again, you've engaged in something, you've committed to something, and you've followed it through? Yes, that is very, very helpful. And then if you do some research, that's usually a very good letter of recommendation for you as well. Yeah.
What is the difference between family medicine and internal medicine?
So both are considered primary care specialties. Family medicine specifically is taking care of a person from birth to death. So I've trained how to do deliveries, I'm trained how to do simple surgeries, I'm trained how to do a lot of procedures, taking care of 1-week-olds and 99-year-olds.
I'll tell you, with your kids, this is extraordinarily handy.
and parents and grandparents.
Yes.
Most family physicians don't tend to go on and do fellowships, although you can do a fellowship in sports medicine or geriatrics and sometimes in obstetrics as well. But most family physicians get out and do primary care. Internal medicine is care of adults specifically, so usually 18 through death. And internal medicine is the residency that you would do if you wish to specialize in something else. So for example, if you want to be a cardiologist, you do a residency in internal medicine, and then you do a fellowship in cardiology. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so if you would just want to do a primary care, maybe is there one that you would choose, you would always choose family medicine over internal medicine?
I love family medicine, first of all, because I could not decide in medical school what I wanted to do. I would do all of my third year rotations and I would be like, I love this, I'm going to be a pediatrician. No, I really like this, I want to be a surgeon. No, OBGYN, that's the way to go.
Can I boast about you for a second? This is relevant. So, my wife is awesome. Honestly, they kept pulling her aside and saying, you could go into this or you could go into this, because they honestly thought family medicine was beneath her. So there's a little bit of bias in medicine that way, so be aware of that. But I mean, she was like way off the charts. They're like, you should go to neurosurgery. They wanted to go to, and she just didn't like that. That's not what you wanted to do, right? You wanted to do this. Don't you remember them doing that?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it really kind of depends on just where your heart is. I really enjoyed not knowing what kind of patient was going to be walking through my office door. And I ended up spending a lot of time working with medically underserved patients. And when we were in Utah, spent most of my time actually taking care of uninsured patients. And so I would be the specialist for them much of the time as well, because we just couldn't refer them anywhere. A lot of people are not super comfortable with not knowing what's going to be walking through the door, and that's perfectly fine. Somebody who is more interested in, say, something like rheumatology, right, because you're interested in that, and it's a very complex system, and it's intellectually stimulating, but you don't really want to deal with anything other than connective tissue and joints. You don't want to have to do anything that has to do with the reproductive system. You don't want to have to do any neurology. That's perfectly fine. So I think it's a matter of, are you by nature more of a generalist, or are you more of an in-depth specialist?
And that's personal, who you are, which you love. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I think Benjamin was the parent. Sorry.
What do you find most rewarding about family medicine in comparison to some of the other specialties that you went through?
I would say the length of relationship with patients. You really do start to develop relationships with patients. Many times I would start to take care of entire families and extended families, and you really get a sense of not just the patient, but really what their life is like at home, because that informs so much of what's really going on. Family medicine in particular is a lot of mental health kind of things. There's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of chronic pain that doesn't necessarily have to do with something you can do a diagnostic test for and prescribe a medication for. But sometimes if you're able to either reassure patients about something or provide like a reasonable plan to kind of figure out what's going on, people will do better. And I found that really satisfying, and I just really enjoy teaching, and a lot of family medicine is about teaching with your patients, and I just think that's a lot of fun too.
So she was waiting for a while. Sorry,
Yes.
we'll come.
So you said you did some stuff like applications and stuff. So on like the more application side of things.
Yeah.
Can you just give like an example of something that like maybe immediately like turn down someone and then immediately like accept someone?
Good question.
This is one thing that is worth knowing. No admissions committees are able to have one person either accept or turn down somebody. And so that's really good to know, because multiple eyes see people's applications through multiple lenses. Things that won't get you through that first hurdle is if your MCAT score isn't above a certain level, and that usually depends on which schools you're applying to, or GPA, and specifically science GPA, not being above a certain level. Somebody who's lied on an application.
Seriously,
We're just done.
You're dead. That's it. Seriously.
Yeah. I think things that tend to get people further along in the process would be partly what I talked about before, which is like a longitudinal demonstration of your interest in medicine. People that have worked as EMTs, as medical assistants, as medical scribes, tend to get kind of like a foot in the door a little bit more easily.
Fly fishing.
Fly fishing.
Sorry, that's an inside joke. Sorry, I'm just going to blatantly boast about my wife again too, because she scored like literally off the chart on the MCAT. I mean, it was like cannot be scored because it's too high. It was really high. But anyhow, so she got past that. But tell the story about the interview. Is this just go you get in and get the interview?
Just something that makes you like a little, like sometimes the quirkiest things. Wasn't that Wash U or UC? I can't remember.
It was Wash U, I'm pretty sure.
We ended up spending most of the interview talking about fly fishing. Honestly.
So be a person, be human, be authentic.
Yeah, because you do tend to see a lot of the same kinds of stories, personal essays when you're doing that on your applications. You know, you're going to get like a lot of really canned advice, talk about adversity, talk about your experience when you were a child or when you had a family member who had a particular thing. Like if that's really true, definitely go ahead and write about that. But don't stretch it because, and again, I'll just use one of my own examples. Like I spent a fair bit of my essay talking about wiring my pickup truck and installing a radio because and I was talking to a couple of you about like what drew me to medicine. I love the humanities. I had a liberal arts and sciences major and then I added a biology major later. I love about medicine how they interact. So figuring out like the physics of wiring up my truck and then talking to people about it or explaining how I did it or just in sharing that with my friends, like that was kind of like my example of how that meshed together. Whatever that is for you that's like really reflective of you as a person and your individuality, that's going to be what you go for.
Oh yeah, the keyword there is authenticity.
Yes.
Because these are really smart committees. They've seen a million of these. They can tell when you're being authentic or not. So again, be authentic. Whatever that is great. I mean, it could be, I think, part of the radio too is like you got down on your hands, just crawled into the dang dash, poured the dang thing out. I mean, you did what needed to be done. You know, and that's really cool.
I mean, that wasn't my entire essay, but it was a portion of it for sure.
The other thing I just want to pop up here real too quick, something where I can be of use to folks. I get students into the OR. I can do that. I've done that for several students. It takes a great deal of patience, but it can be done. So if you're really thinking kind of in particularly like the surgery sort of thing, and then seriously talk to me. Because this is one of the things, if you can say I've actually been in the surgical OR, I stood next to the surgeon, I saw the surgery happen, I didn't faint, I didn't, I got through it. Seriously, that shows you know what you're getting into. And when I joke that, I've had 2 people faint on me, where you literally, no, it happens. Because it's
that's okay.
It's okay, yeah. I'm joking a little bit.
My medicals, everyone in their medical school class has somebody faint at some point. It's just, you have to get used to it.
You get used to it,
I guess it's a question for both of you. Throughout your careers, like, what is your engine that kept you going, even through the hardest challenges? I know in medicine, it can be very toxic sometimes. What drives you forward?
For me, I would say just my genuine love and caring for people. Honestly.
And seriously, and I'll tell you again. I'm saying my wife because yes, that's true. But it's relationships. So there's my heart for the technology and science and that sort of stuff. That won't get you all the way there. What gets you there is I can come talk to Susan about it. I talk to Dr. Ponce about it. We talk, and you build this camaraderie. I mean, honestly, like, again, you'll build this camaraderie. Like, your class, and honestly, I hang out both with my wife, so most of her classmates were my friends. But I could pick up the phone and call Alan, and I haven't seen the guy in 20 years, and be like, Bradley, hey, how you doing? And we could just totally drop right back into it. Because you've been through this thing together, right? And so if you build those relationships, and it's awesome. Yeah, but that's what will sustain you. Because if you're just trying to totally, do myself, that's like the hardest. I mean, you may be able to do it, but that's hard. That's really hard.
And if you're able to do that, it's going to be really difficult to sustain.
Yeah. Yeah. But we used to get together like every Thursday night and watch. This is back before you could like watch on demand. It was all like you had to watch it when they showed it.
So we got together Thursday night and watched ER and Law and Order. It was Thursday night, must see TV, and we'd all get all the medical students and order cheap ass pizza, and that's what it was awesome. Yeah, that's what will keep you going. Anything else? Go for it.
This is kind of a question for both of you, I guess, but for those of us that, I guess like this would be like the MD, PhD kind of candidate, career paths in terms of like being involved in research, but also being involved with like patients one-on-one.
Yeah.
I guess what would be your advice on like what to pursue there?
If you really, it's on, well, so this is my heart. I love this, and I've graduated multiple MD, PhD students. It's a balance, but how this plays out is you'll have this co-research component, and that you want to keep that really focused, and it needs to mesh with the clinical stuff somehow, right? And that will, again, it's not, if you want it, this has got to be your heart. If you're into that and want to do that, they can make that work. Realize that's going to prolong the process by 3 or 4 years. At least, and not. And when I do MD PhDs, I always try and like get it focused to get it done, right? You can't stretch that puppy because they have to go back and do so much more also. So both Tyler and Ashley, I think we're done in 3 years. I got them done in 3 years. Well-defined projects. They tend to be really motivated, smart people, and they go real fast. So I saw them get out of the way. It's kind of what happens.
That being said,
yes.
They were both doing kind of like the bioengineering.
Yes.
Some of my classmates at WashU, they got their PhD components done in like 2 years, but they were more like immunology labs.
Yes.
Things where research can turn over much more quickly.
But typical PhDs from out is like 5 or 6 years. It's more typical. So again, get to 3 years is a big deal. But yeah, sometimes you can even do it in 2 if it's a really focused project. In terms of clinical practice, what happens a lot is your time as a clinician is so valuable, the research has to take a back seat. And how this plays out is like Dr. Ponce, who's like the big neurosurgeon, he's like a small industry. I mean, seriously, he generates literally tens of millions of dollars, like a month probably, for the hospital, right? His time is so valuable, he can't spend a lot of it on research. He did great research back in his earlier days, but kind of now, I'm kind of like his postdoc. It's like, he's like, I do all that stuff with him, and he guides him and talk about it, right? So he gets all the joy out of it, but he can't sit around and write grants and program computers and stuff. It's just not worth his time. And then Dr. Merzadeh also worked with, he actually runs a lab, so he's a little bit more junior, and he runs a whole lab. It's all on metabolism and physiology and eating and that sort of stuff, kind of aimed at eating disorders, that sort of thing. So, but he does that. He's pretty hands-on with that, and he does a lot of neurosurgery, and probably doesn't sleep a whole lot. So it's kind of, you have to work that balance. But the factors you'll see will come in is that your time as a physician becomes so valuable. It's tougher to do that unless, and again, this becomes a negotiation with whoever is that you can get protected time. Like Zaman has protected time, where he negotiates like, look, if you want to hire me, and I know you want to, you have to give me 1 day a week where I'm going to be in the lab. And they say, okay, you know.
The other pathway that this can often take is where MD, PhDs become faculty at major teaching institutions.
Yes.
So places like UCLA or WashU or University of Michigan, that have like the really big teaching hospitals as well as the big university and that kind of a backing. Because then if you become a faculty person, you can often have much more protected time, so that you not only teach for the medical school, see some patients, but then conduct your own research and then generate funding that way.
But you're probably not going to get paid as much as if you did, and that's just the reality. So,
but there are multiple pathways.
But you're not going to be poor. you're not going to go hungry. But you'll just have to make that trade-off.
Yeah. And the other thing that's worth looking into is there's a lot of medical schools that have these medical scientist training programs where they will pay for your medical school if you get admitted to those programs, which is a chunk of change. Yeah. So it's worth really doing your investigation. If you want to get into one of those MSTP programs, you do need to have a fairly significant research resume.
Yes. But that's typically how most people do it, because that's a huge perk. I mean, think about it. You come out of medical school, you get your MD, PhD, no debt, no nothing. It's huge. Yeah.
Tiny question. Can you do that with just an MD? Can you do research with just an MD?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. No, and typically what will happen there is they'll partner with somebody like me, just to help with the technical engineering details. details kind of stuff. And also, that's what I love too, because I'm not an MD, I'm not licensed practice medicine, I don't understand all this physiology, I go ask her when I need to know that stuff. And so you work out partnerships like that all the time. But oftentimes, some MDs will do very focused research, but again, you find just the time commitment's tough there.
Or there, one thing not to forget about is just practice-based research. Because Bradley's very much on the basic science, on the science and the technological side of things. But so much of medical research just has to do with practice.
Yeah, how many patients did this help? Sort of thing, yeah.
So there's usually like a lot of opportunities.
And that's actually
that
bigger.
Kind of research as well.
That's bigger than the stuff I do.
And
oh, you sure?
Is there another question?
Yeah, come finish. It's okay.
So I've actually thought I considered BME, but currently I'm more into like biotech and like cell biology kind of research.
So that's BME
so, like,
too.
Which field is more growing in terms of like adjacent to and like a para to medicine?
Well, so here's my bias that I'm in BME. The engineering is more rigorous. It's more mathematical and will be taken a little more seriously.
A lot more calculus.
A lot more math. But that math provides rigorous, solid foundation. It provides predictability. And this is one of the real challenges in medicine. Is medicine, guys, it's not a science. It's not. You have to be willing to work outside kind of the parameters of math and stuff because there ain't no math to guide you. However, underlying a lot of that is some math and physics and chemistry that can really, really help. And if you're really solid at that, it's a leg up, I would say. Yeah. I can show you.
Yeah, so for the track that you're on, for what you do on the technological engineering side, like, is that mainly in the research aspect?
I'm total research.
Yeah.
I mean, if I touch a patient, they arrest me. That's like, no, I'm not licensed to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Because I'm a mechanical engineer, but really interested in your research and what you do and prosthetics and that just connection to the brain and technology.
Well, so that mechanical engineering will serve you well because it's a rigorous. All of this is kinematics. It's all biomechanics, right? It's really complex, not nice mathematically formed like robots, right? Yeah. But it's similar principles. And if you can bring that mathematical rigor into this realm where things get a little softer and squishier, and you understand that is super valuable. And honestly, I think that's the future. It's going to be this math and biology. And I call it the squishy bit. It's like the stuff that just doesn't obey the math really well. It just kind of morphs on you as you do it. But that's the reality of the situation. But you can bring a rigor to it that's really helpful. And mechanical engineering stuff, that's for anything from cardiology. It's a pump, right? We just spent like an hour talking about this the other night, working through all that. But it's a really complicated pump that does really cool things. But if you have the mathematics to kind of model that and treat it rigorously, that's awesome.
And so, again, would that field be mainly in research, or?
Depends. I bet there are hundreds of, many physicians come out of mechanical engineering. And they end up doing things like biomechanics or heart, or there's something where they take that math rigor and they apply it to the pathology. So absolutely. And may do some research too, may not, depending on that. But that foundation is good, for sure. And will be taken with great respect in the medical field. Yeah.
So I kind of have two questions. So the first one, how many hours?
I'm feeling really guilty. I'm sitting here sitting in the chair.
Oh, here, I'll be
But there we go. Now I don't feel guilty about sitting down with my wife. Sorry. All right.
So how many hours in the clinical hours and the shadowing hours make you look committed to the field? And the second question would be does your undergrad shape you? Does it make you better during your application cycle?
Let me address the second part first. You mean which major? What do you major in? It shapes your application a little less than you might think.
Well, what was your undergrad in?
Liberal arts and sciences and biology.
There you go.
Yeah. And I tacked the biology on at the end. It was just going to be straight liberal arts and sciences, and I had a minor in Spanish and a minor in chemistry.
and full ride scholarship to WashU. Yeah. So we're
From
not,
Utah State
yeah.
University. Yeah.
Which is why we're not poor right now.
It's not so much what major you pick, it's kind of like what you do with it and how it informs what you want to do. Like for me, liberal arts and sciences and the biology together made a cohesive story because I was always interested in primary care, right? If I had wanted to follow like Bradley's path and maybe I wanted to be an MD, PhD and do neural prosthetics.
You would have hated it though.
I would have hated it because it's just not my character,
Yeah.
but you know, then a bioengineering degree would have made a whole lot more sense. If that makes sense. You can have a major in Spanish and get into medical school.
Yep.
You do need to do the prerequisite courses, so you kind of end up with almost like a double major much of the time because you need the biology, the chemistry, the physics, the calculus, all that stuff.
Exactly right. There may be a little bit of bias towards the rigorous science majors, again, because what you're demonstrating is I can just get through this hard stuff. It's basically what you do.
Yeah, I actually disagree with that. I
Well,
don't think there's a bias.
Okay, listen to her. She knows more than I do.
Yeah.
That's probably my bias. Is what it is. So.
Yeah.
What about the first question?
Remind me again what that was. Sorry.
With the hours, it's like your clinical
Whoa.
membership.
Do you know, if you guys have pre-med advisors here, I might go along with what they have to say. I only know what my medical school says, and we don't actually really ask about the hours. We really just want to know, is it longitudinal? Is it something you're doing regularly?
Like 1 hour, no.
Right? Is it somewhere where you've gone and you've shadowed somebody once a month for 6 months? That is more impressive than if you did, 200 hours over a summer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
A word of caution to go, the medical advisors here, I'm not really sure how versed they are. So if they tell you a specific number, ask them how they know that. Because they might just be making it up, honestly. So be a little cautious there.
Yeah.
But fundamentally what they're looking for is, have you seen it? What have you seen?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what will come up like in interviews and stuff like that. You don't say, well, I followed Dr. So-and-so we did this, and I saw these procedures, and this wacky thing happened in the middle of one day. That's kind of what they're hoping to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it doesn't, the number of hours doesn't matter so much as like the quality. Like if you find an opportunity to shadow somebody who is a urologist and that's really not where your interest is, and that physician doesn't spend very much time talking to you, but you spend, several hours every month doing that, or if you spend a couple of hours a few times with somebody who really sits down and talks with you and really helps strategize and gives you a chance to really experience what you're interested in, your application, that's going to end up coming through in your essays and in your interviews where it was a really meaningful experience to you, right? Because we kind of get this sense of when somebody's just checking boxes and when something is actually meaningful. So do the things that are meaningful for you.